Welcome to the Demystifying Digital webinar. And historically, we were focusing primarily on disruptive technologies. So something that is normally perceived as a foundation or the driver or enable for digital transformation. And we were talking about blockchain, artificial intelligence, or big data to help non-technical leaders to understand really how they can benefit from using those technologies and build new products, services, or enable better internal efficiency of their organizations. At the same time, digital transformation, it's not just about technology. And at some point, we realized that it is very important to discuss non-technical aspects of a digital transformation. Those human factors, or in a broader view, maybe non-technology factors of a digital transformation, it's something that sometimes we are learning hard way. Because over the course of last 5 to 10 years, many companies, many leaders, they were very excited about using new technologies. Unfortunately, in many ways, the way they were trying to apply them, they were far from optimal way of doing that. But actually, that's technology piece. And I wouldn't say it's easy to do, but it's predictable. I mean, if you have a proper competence in a particular technology, or you have a professional provider, technology piece, they know how to sort out, the technology people. But what makes a digital transformation, as well as any other transformation, complex, is actually a combination of different factors: people, processes, cultures, and they're definitely technology. So that's what we want to talk about today. And it's my pleasure to invite our guest speakers today, Alberto Parolo and Kragelund.
I have an engineering background, and I worked for about 20 years as a manager for multinational companies, large companies, and international organizations, always in the IT domain, but never as a technician. So always working, say, in projects, so seeing about the organizational and human side of information technology. And since about a dozen years, I'm a consultant and sourcing advisor also to companies and organizations on digital transformation projects and sourcing activities and initiatives. Very glad to be with you today. As Alexander said, feel free to ask and shoot any question. Something Alexander was saying that triggered my attention was about the demystifying and the digital transformation. Actually, we're going to talk about digital transformation, and I was looking for a good definition of it. So, is there a standard definition? Then I came across an academic paper of guys who had listed 134 different definitions of digital transformation. So I said, okay, I stay away of any standard, and I'll give my own understanding of what is DT. And very simple, in demystified words, let's say that every time that in your business, through the use of information technology, you do new things, or you do things in a different way, then you operate a digital transformation. So it is as simple as that. It's a view, it's a conceptual view of getting together the purpose of doing things differently, or the opportunity of doing new things through the use of technology. It's not about having sophisticated or fashionable technology, okay, blockchain, but it is not because we use blockchain that we operate a digital transformation. It's because we do new things through new and digital technologies. So we have a travel through a number of points today. When you go to conferences, it's often about celebration of how great achievements have been done. That won't be the case today, quite frankly. We would speak about real things, some experiences, some mistakes, some lessons learned. So how of things that we have seen and we would like to share with you. So let's move perhaps to the first slide that you see, which is in a nutshell how we see the modeling of digital transformation. Let's say we are in a situation we call current situation, and we would like to move to what we call the target situation 2. So a situation where we can do new things and or things we are already doing, but done in a quite a different way with information technology. And how we get there? We get there through, of course, IT, through the development of a solution. Very often we go through an interim or more interim phases. We have simplified it, say there will be a target situation 1, where we got temporarily to get a minimum viable product or something which already works, but it's not yet the final operational situation. And remember what we said about digital transformation. We need a vision. We need business and human factors, because it's not because we introduce new technology that we do digital transformation. Is because we do new things or we do things differently. And it's not the computers who do the things, it's the people. So we need first to have a vision, and then through the merge of the vision and the alignment of information technology to vision, we can achieve that target situation 2. Let's call it next step. We noted a few boxes in the middle. There are 5 that we will discuss towards the end of our conversation. It's because we have fixed, say, the bullet points, the 4 pillars around our discussions, and we, in the last part of the conference, of the webinar, we will enter a bit more on how to do the things without being prescriptive or giving any truth about that.
In short, I'm not an engineer as Alberto. I'm actually a linguist by education. However, for the last approximately 25 years, I have been working in mainly operational and executive roles across both agriculture, law, FMCG, and IT. So I have a quite diverse background. I've worked in a number of countries, but since 2007, I'm based permanently in Ukraine. And the main area that I have been working with through my career is human and digital organizational development. And I would completely agree with Alberto's definition of digital transformation, as we have seen over the years, and not least accelerated by the pandemic. The human and digital interaction is increasing, and it will only be increasing even more. So when we talk about transformation, it's basically any kind of transformation that involves some kind of digital. It's a very broad definition, but I believe that that is the best way to encompass it. My main area of work is both in the strategizing and the execution phases with my clients, and it encompasses both human and digital organization development, basically. So with that aside, the current situation, what I've seen through my career is a number of focus points where companies tend to focus on when they assess the current situation. It's very often that there is a focus on financial hard metrics, as I call them. What is the ROI? What are we going to get out of it? What is lacking in that capacity is what are the people ROIs? What are the people metrics that we would like to achieve as well? In my experience, that seems to have been sort of put a little bit aside. I also see that the mapping of the people capabilities that are currently in the organization, it's either insufficient or it is, let's say, overestimated. in as much as a person only has so many hours in the day and only has so much time to devote, and so much mental capacity also to devote to things. In particular, if you are in an operational role and you are already, let's say, investing 95% of your time into that, then if there's coming a project from above saying, now you need to devote 25% of your time to this new change project, then 95 plus 25, you do the math, it's over exaggerating the capacity of the person. So the organizational capacity for change, if you have too many projects going on at the same time, people are getting exhausted. And when people get exhausted, they tend to start distancing themselves, or they dig themselves into the various projects. And if you are overstretched in your capacity, then eventually motivation will get impacted, and obviously also the performance. And if the people performance is not adding up, then that will influence both the result of the project, but also on the overall corporate bottom line. Stakeholder engagement. Stakeholders is a very wide, let's say, mapping exercise in my experience. And what I've seen is that companies tend to focus on the internal stakeholders, but not sufficiently, whereas the external stakeholders, the customers, obviously that is what makes the business actually profitable. However, there are certain areas where I see a lack of focus on also two-way communication, a two-way engagement. And that not least when it comes to communication. People are the assets of an organization. I'm sure you've all heard that many, many times. However, what I have seen in my experience is that there is a tendency to not focus enough on that two-way communication. So you actually engage your people and you release the energy. And actually also, if there's too much going on, that people are feeling psychologically safe enough to actually bring that to the table, so you get a much more fruitful engagement towards the project and getting to the result.
So first of all, this organizational capacity to accommodate changes. What I've seen in my experience, and I just want to learn from yours, is that top management, they normally overestimating ability of their organization to change. So they're normally saying, aha, we have this new transformation initiative, perfect. We have a great team, and they're just very eager to start working on yet another one in parallel to everything else. And they just go do that, you know. And when you're trying to dig deeper and you talk to people in different levels of the corporate hierarchy, the perception is totally different. And the deeper you go, the harsh the situation will look, because people saying, look, I have my daily job, right? And on top of them, like you said, they are coming out of nowhere and tell me, okay, now you have a new head and you have to run the transformation. And unfortunately, I witnesses myself, and I participated in a transformation. They were failing badly sometimes because people simply were not given a capacity to work on changes. But that's not the only problem, because it's not just about the capacity. It's about having a skill and the mindset, if you like, to run or even to support changes. Right. So what's your view on that? How to deal with that? Taking into account that most of the organization, they are not that flexible as they should be.
Well, first of all, I completely agree with you. That's also my experience, unfortunately. And I wish there was a 100% bulletproof answer to your question. My recommendation would be that management really listens to what's going on in the organization. I'm sure that there are a lot of digital systems already in the company. You need to consolidate the data from that into a holistic view on what is actually going on in the organization. It can't be that you have top management sitting in the ivory tower and having some emails going out, or some town hall meetings where they are painting the beautiful picture of what we want to achieve, if you're not listening to what is coming back to you. And of course, as I was mentioning, the psychological safety in the organization, where people actually feel that it matters if I speak up, and if I speak up, my management will actually listen to me. That is a culture that is being built over years. And if that culture is not there, it is a long haul to get to that, let's say, safety area where people can speak up. It's very important to have this two-way communication loop and actually listening to what the organization is saying.
That was exactly my second question, because I've been doing that a lot myself. So I was doing this all hands meetings with the management teams, like in tens of locations across Europe, and I was participating in that in different companies. And what I've noticed is that in most of the cases, executive leaders, when they are like presenting their idea or a transformation, they are transmitting. They are like working in mode of the radio. This is Radio Gaga, you know. So we transmit that, and you listen. And the fact that you are not raising your hand and you're not like asking question means that you all of you guys, you accepted that, and you will spend the rest of your life like dedicating it to making it happen, which is definitely not the case. Because if there is no resistance, good or bad resistance to changes, there is no acceptance. Because people, it's like you said, people just they don't want to raise their hand and raise their concerns. And because my understanding was that the leaders, they should act totally different. They have to provoke the audience to fight and challenge the idea. And
on the one hand, yes, but if people are not comfortable speaking up, then it doesn't matter how much they provoke, because people are just going to sit with the mindset, well, why even bother speaking up, because they're not listening to me anyway.
This reminds me also a lessons learned. As we said, we're not going to talk about enthusiastic, only perfect success stories, but I have an interesting experience from a project. I was consulting to the CEO of a quite important company, and this guy was a guy with who had a vision on the future. He knew where his company should evolve and go, and he had very interesting ideas. The problem is that he was not interested at all in how to get there. So this was an example of a guy with who had a vision but without a project, and that's this picture, you know, the famous picture of Caspar Friedrich, the guy was, yeah, he was able to see the mountains far away, but there were clouds underneath, so there was no path. This guy, the CEO, was constantly giving initiatives to his IT director. So almost, I wouldn't say every day, but at least every week, calling him, oh, you should do this and that, and we don't do this initiative. And every time there was something new, and the most recent one was the most urgent. And at some stage, I was consulting on the application strategy at that time, but had some feeling with the CEO. Said, well, Morris, but do you know how many projects you're running currently? I said, well, yes, of course, it's 5 or 6. I said, I'm not too sure. And I spent a couple of days speaking to the CIO and a number of business people around, and then I went back to Morris saying, hey, I listed 25 projects running, and here's the Kanban board of those. He was totally unaware that what he was shooting as initiative or as vision, they should become a project. There were actually projects people should work on, but he didn't give any opportunity. So there is always this need to identify projects. It's not trivial. Define the purpose, the timeline, the owners, report, measure, prioritize, define the people, drop, say, no, this we're not gonna do because we haven't got time, and to coordinate across projects because projects talk together. And the measurement and monitoring is very important as well.
Yeah, Alberto, which leads me to my next question, because I must admit that this is pretty typical situation when top leaders or the first person in the company, they kind of detached themselves from the execution of a transformation. And my always understanding was that the transformation is something that's never happening bottom up. So it's always top to bottom. And even though you have a fantastic team and a very open culture, and they are very eager to changes, it still requires a constant guidance, and the guidance is a polite way of saying enforcement of the transformation. And therefore, even though you have a proper people experienced taking care of a transformation on operational level, is like a vital precondition for transformation success is to make sure that the first person or all the key decision makers in the company, they're constantly like looking at all the effectively all the aspects of a transformation. What do you think about that?
Yes, absolutely. And this is always, I think, related. That's why I was already switched to next slide, because that triggers one remark to what you were saying, and I agree, is that sometimes there's a disalignment on the concept, the meaning of vision. So having a vision doesn't just mean, okay, we're gonna get there. There's also something about how you're gonna get there and how you decide to communicate. So the top management who should trigger the activity, they of course need to have the business view on that. So the mission of the company, the possible evolution of the mission of the company through the use of digital technology, but also where and how we can get there, which are the resources, how I can involve them, how the guidance should be done, and if we are capable to do it with our own strength and resource internally as a company, or if we need external experts. Most often is the second, because it's quite specialized.
If I may add to that, and I'm fully aligned with Alberto here, and the beautiful vision is nothing if you do not have execution. And execution, it's usually the people on the front line who actually know best how to do the execution. They know where are the issues, where are the challenges. So tapping into that knowledge can make the link between vision and execution so much better. And they may even bring to the table, in my experience, they often have, brought to the table some bits and pieces which actually consolidates and makes the vision even more strong. And thereby, you again tapping into the organizational energy to bring the company forward, so it becomes a joint effort.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, every topic we are touching clearly deserving a separate webinar. But just in the sake of time, very short question about one of the bullet points here. So you mentioned lack of adaptation between vision and solution, and that this is an iterative process. But in your eyes, the vision itself, is it something that stays like frozen, if you like, throughout the transformation, or it's something that might change as well? Because we often having discussions on that with top executives at our clients, because many of them they tend to think that, okay, if we have a vision, this is something carved in stone, this is our 10 commandments in the whole Bible, and we cannot touch that, because otherwise, like we are trying to shoot a moving target, and it's not a vision anymore, it's not a strategy anymore. What do you think about that?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no easy answer to this question, because there are, I would say, both things at the same time. I'm now not speaking philosophically, but just looking into digital transformation projects. So on one side, the the moving target is a danger in the sense that we have seen companies, CIOs or more marketing departments sometimes being fascinated by technology and by new things. And so constantly readdressing their targets according to opportunities and new things and new fashion, which is a danger, because then you cannot steer to a real business target and consolidate. On the other hand, the other way, it doesn't work as well. We are living interesting times, and the dynamics of change, not only of technology but of business, is very quick. So it's we need this agility in an adaptation of process, not only as agile methodology for developing the solutions, but also to adjust to targets. So move perhaps through a number of sequential minimum viable products until we get to something we can define stable. And again, stability is quite relative. One important thing is that you get solutions which are quite flexible and adaptive to change or to be replaced in short time. So I see this balance. Yes, for sure, there should be a steering to somewhere. Otherwise, there's no sense in the business. But also the speed of change and the agility.
I would like to add to that, because I think the vision, again, how do people define vision? I think let's say granularity of a vision, like how granular is it? Is it let's say operational vision, or is it a long-term strategic vision? If you have a long-term strategic vision, I usually call it the lighthouse. What is the lighthouse that you're steering towards? And then using mechanisms like, for instance, OKRs, just to take an example, then using that to sort of steer towards that lighthouse. And then at a certain interval, quarterly, 6 months, yearly, whatever makes sense for the organization, to do a sense check. Are we still steering towards that lighthouse? So if you make the vision, let's say, bold enough, big enough, but still you're sort of giving a sense of direction for your organization and cascading that down through all the levels of the organization, I believe you can achieve that, let's say, collaboration, but also that joint understanding of what is our sense, what is our direction, where are we going? So it's, yeah, the best theory versus best practice versus best fit. Theory is good, practice is better, fit is the best. There is no one size fits all. There simply isn't. You can get inspired from theory, from global consulting companies bringing in best practice, but what has worked in one organization, you can't necessarily copy paste to your organization. You have your organizational context, which is the reality that you're operating within. And it really is a matter of balancing off the changes and the let's say the capacity of changes we've already talked about, and picking those quick wins so that you can actually really emphasize to the organization what's in it for you, and achieving a higher and higher degree of buy-in from the different organizational units and people, for that matter. Again, the culture is I can't emphasize enough that if you do not already at today have a culture where people feel comfortable speaking up, it's next to impossible, I would say almost impossible, to achieve that overnight. It's speaking the organizational language, really for management to get out of the so-called ivory tower and speak to everybody across the verticals, across the hierarchy, so you really can feel what are people thinking, and so people are comfortable speaking up. So again, the attentiveness is really key in this aspect. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah, I can only confirm that, because probably I was sharing this example with you earlier. So a couple of years ago, We were doing a consulting project on the roadmap for the transformation of back office function for a huge company. And they've been working with super reputable consultancy, like recognized and globally known and respected. So definitely this consultancy firm, they know all the theory, and I believe they invented part of the theory. And definitely they have a fantastic practice, because they're handling 1,000 of clients, including the largest multinationals in the world in terms of a transformation. But after working with them for 2 years, the steering committee of this organization, they realized they have nothing. I mean, nothing, to the extent that they failed to like present the progress report to the board. And that was the moment when they invited us. That was very interesting invitation. They found me through the common network, and they say, yeah, it's not gonna hurt if you try to do something with that. So it was very interesting invitation to do something. And actually, we helped them, and within 5 months, I believe, we built this roadmap, something they were trying to do for 2 years already without any success. And this is the perfect example when the fit thing was completely missed. Because actually, after relatively short discovery phase, we realized that there are critical gaps in the company, and they simply wouldn't be able to. I'm not saying even implement this roadmap. They cannot even build a roadmap with those preconditions, and unless they fix some of the critical problems, for example, with resources and the management model and the motivation, they simply cannot do that. So that was the best illustration for what you were saying. So the theory and the practice, they're great, but the fit is what's the most important thing.
Yeah. I see there's a comment here from Fred Sealer, who's saying that after creating a vision, you need to add the foundation, which is the mission and the strategy, and then first OKRs come in. I couldn't agree more. Actually, the case story that I picked for today to illustrate that is, in particular, an organization that wanted to implement OKRs. That was the let's say the mandate that I was presented with. But when I started digging into the story with management, then actually what was discovered was that there was a messy technology infrastructure. There was an unclear organizational structure, and there was no visibility as to the business data, some dashboards, very simple even. So in that context, we had to really dig back to basics and say, what is it you want to achieve? What is the vision? And then let's look at what it's going to take to get there. What kind of org structure is needed? What kind of technology can sustain and build the foundation for achieving that vision? And once you have that, then we can look at the OKRs. So I don't know if that feeds in with your comment, Fred, but
it's very interesting, because actually it's time. Sorry, I was too focused on my questions, and I was ignoring the questions coming from the Q&A section. But it's perfect timing to start reading them, because we have got a question, or rather comment, from Fred Sealer, for example, and he is saying, literally in exact words, after creating a vision, you need to add the foundation, which is the mission and the strategy, where first OKRs come in. So yeah.
Yeah, that was basically building on that comment from Fred as well. So it's perfect timing, as you said, Alexander, that there has to be an understanding of where do the different bits and pieces fit together, so that it all comes together across the organization to reach where the management sees the company going.
And this make the invisible visible thing is also an interesting that often when we are coming to help the company in transformation, actually we are we rarely discovering something they didn't know. So we rather voicing the things that never were said loud in the company. But we are externals, we have a luxury to do that, right?
Yeah.
So in many ways, what we add into this process is actually this eye-opening exercise at all levels. First of all, to executives.
Yeah, voicing the undiscussables, as Chris Aguirre called them many years ago.
Yes, in reality, we are reiterating in the key point on the key point of our conversation, which is the importance and the difficulty to converge the technical and the non-technical factors through the build of what we call the target situation too. So where we want to go, we want to steer towards something which has a common objective for the team, of course, but at the same time needing some elasticity, some agility for adjustments, and we need the technology to get there, and we need to synchronize a number of things. So it's not immediately, it's reiterative, and it's complex. So we need flexibility, performance, and speed of what we're going to achieve. This needs to make sense from a business point of view, of course. That's the starting point, but it's also the point of the vision. So not technology for technology itself, but the technology part needs a great control on delivery. Otherwise, it becomes playing with gadgets, and instead of having, say, fast fail stories that bring knowledge, we will have frustration for not being able to build anything useful.
What is, in your view, the optimal time to market or time to internal client with transformations?
There's again the silly answer is it depends. In reality, it depends. It's a matter of balance. What are the stress on two sides? On one side, we have the stress of getting immediate results. See the thing, the target situation 1, if not target situation 2, happening very soon, and be able to play with it. So some people are looking for days or a few weeks to get something operational, which is sometimes not obvious to obtain. Not really for technical reasons, but for the maturity of getting the awareness machine within the company work. You need to have a team thinking together of what needs to be done. On the opposite, this is an agile process, and as we said, the business dynamics is very fast. So this kind of projects cannot be projects lasting a year before getting minimum viable products or interim target situations too. So for a quick answer to a quick question, say 12 to 18 weeks is probably the time which is reasonable on average to get a target situation in place, not earlier. So you need to work at least 3-4 months before having, which is something which is valuable, which doesn't mean that in a couple of weeks you can have some play tool to deal with. So I have a lesson learned from a company, which was a multinational company who did a major outsourcing of their IT infrastructure and workplace and application maintenance. It was really a big thing. It was around SAP and non-SAP applications. So that was something radical. This was run with an RFP with great partners. The project started, the team in place was great, the supplier was great, but the customer ignored the recommendations which came from the advisor saying, hey guys, you need to organize yourselves to manage this situation once you will have given to the outsourcer these activities, because the people in the company who are going to run and drive the processes will not be the same people who are running and operating the actual processes now. So the matter of knowledge management and skills is not an obvious. And this was a bit ignored. So, no, but we're going to think about that. Our people are great. And in any case, we have the supplier. And this project has been a partial failure. So after 6 months, transition was still not okay. And the supplier was blamed, but it was not the supplier's fault, because that part of human factor, of organization, of vision, of how things should work, in the end, it was neglected. So two main remarks around that is that there are activities that cannot be delegated. You can have a perfect outsourcer who can run your processes, but still you need to get some control and understanding. And the second pillar is just that the change of solutions can imply different activities, different roles, different attitudes, capabilities, behaviors, skill, and ultimately different people on the customer side. You might need to replace people because the new organization, the new way of working, it will be different from the current one.
It's a very interesting topic, because actually involving external partners, providers, or outsourcing of some of the functions and scope of the digital transformation, it's just yet another dimension adding complexity to the transformation, because actually changes they're not easy to do even internally if you have all the expertise and the resources internally, but when you need to do that in a distributed environment, and especially if you rely on multiple vendors at the same time, that's not easy, and there's special art and science. And what you're saying is also related to one of my favorite topics. It's I fully agree that this is a cultural difference, and it's something that requires changes on the client side as well, when you're doing the massive changes, especially involving the vendors. Because actually most of the organization and most of the line managers, for example, they are perfect in what they are doing, right? In a sense that their organizations and the cultures, they are built around this run the business approach, right? So we have the function, we execute on this function, we master that perfectly. And when you need to change something, even though they perfectly understand the context, because they know their own company better than anybody else. We cannot even come near to in understanding of their businesses, right? But what they're lacking often is actually this change the business approach or change the business culture. And I've seen example when the people who are running their organizations or teams or departments for many years, they were very successful in transforming them. But that's rather a unique situation, because normally you need somebody else with a proper culture, expertise, and capacity, as we discussed previously, to help organization to transform.
This is actually that's a personal remark on that. Something I adore from the work I do is to deal with multidisciplinary teams. So this is a perfect example. So you cannot delegate to the techies the business requirements and the target of your business, and at the same time, it's not a good idea to have bricolage, as the French say, do-it-yourself technology by the business people, by the marketing people, and having the team sitting together and building the thing is a very nice part of the job. And the fact that some resources and some competences are inside of the company or outside the company is relatively irrelevant. So you should find the trusted advisors and experts outside, and then you can easily integrate them. But you cannot ask external, what should I do for my business? Unless it's a business advisor, but it's a different story.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. The most amazing feeling is when you have all these people sitting in the room and all of a sudden you see the light switching on in their eyes because now they understand each other, and being that bridge building capacity is really what yeah, what makes me do what I do. Because as Alberto said, you know, play into people's strengths and let's say let down your guard and listening to each other and together the energy that can be released in an organization is absolutely amazing. And that's what will bring the company forward. It's when we get beyond our own filters, beyond our own assumptions, beyond our own prejudice that we have consciously or subconsciously even. And that is where you can really get into some positive movement forward.
Which brings us also to the next subject, which was also touched partially by the question from Asif, is okay, we spoke about the boxes, the vision, the starting point, but how are we going to get there? So which roles, which activities and capabilities do we need? And so we have made a small schema identifying five of those. One, we needed a transition and transformation project from a technology point of view. So we need the people who are able to build the thing. And then if we move a bit to the right, we need the people who are able to implement and make it a real operational service, which are two different things. The second is sometimes forgotten. So it's we're not speaking about prototyping digital transformation. We are speaking about having a solution which works, which is redundant, which is stable, which is robust, which is scalable, and this needs to be run by operations people. Then we need to have someone who knows how to drive this process of transformations, not just the technological part, but say the process and organization part. So as Karen anticipated, the transformation consultancy theory, it's important, not in terms of academic theory, but in how to lead this process, and then how to execute it, how to lead and manage it. So all this we can call a full transformation project, which is the activity or the set of activities that go together. And so partly going back to Asif's questions, what do we need? Let's start from the two technical boxes of the upper side. For the project, we need here's a non-exhaustive checklist, but a checklist that needs at least to be filled. We need to have the knowledge, or find the knowledge and find the trusted partners who have the technology, the solutions, who going to deliver it. A technological partner. We need to have a business owner inside the company and an empowered project management team in the company as well. Otherwise, the project we will fall in the problem of the CEO was launching the initiatives, but just looking at a very vague vision and no project. When we move more to the second part, so the real target, not the interim target one, but the real target two, then the technological partner becomes even more important, because it's not the partner for testing a solution, it's the partner for keeping a solution alive. And definitely we need the involvement at the top level, so that the CIO needs to be part of the operational team. Recently, I just finished a project for a very big multinational company worldwide, and the group CIO was following the activities which will be done at least weekly, or 2-3 times per week. The group CIO was really a big guy, a big vice president, but there was this direct feeling for him, and also for communicating to the team that, okay, we are on the same target. And we need the involvement of the guys who need then to keep operational the solution, so to run the operations team, would it be internal or external, but the ownership of that part. And definitely the role of project management here is crucial and needs to be some senior people.
There are a couple of questions here as well. So again, getting back to having empowered internal project manager, I think it's very important because you cannot really orchestrate the transformations from the outside. And even though you're helping the company to transform, they have to dedicate a powerful and the purpose-driven person, which is very well connected and influential in the organization, in order to make it happen and help organization align internally, first of all. And my question is related to the previous bullet point in terms of IT delivery and run. Nowadays, I can see more and more transformations related to technology happening with help of external consultants and vendors. There are multiple reasons for that. So the most obvious is that competition over technology talents is fierce and it's globalized. And now if the IT, what you are doing in terms of a digital transformation is not core competence of your organization, it will be extremely hard to build your internal team to do that. So that's why, and even though you build this team, it's very hard to retain those guys. So in most of the cases, companies, they say, okay, we keep this critical mass of expertise inside and we keep the full control, including by having a project manager on our end, but at the same time, the delivery and run is actually with our vendors.
I see what you mean. Let me present it from a slightly different angle. In the past, we were seeing mostly two roles. So the role of the customer and the role of the supplier in getting this kind of developments, or IT projects. Okay, either you have internal expertise and then you rely on just the executors from the supplier, or you put yourself in the hand of the external supplier. What we see now is that the best practice is actually to see three different roles. And then we will see the balance between the roles. One role is the one of the customer, who definitely needs to retain the business ownership's role. So there can be no delegation to anybody in external to the company or whatever. Otherwise, that's failure. And there's the high-end expertise on the tools, on the technology. And what we are seeing also as best practice is that no company, as customer company, has the high-end expertise and should not have it for these IT projects, because it gets very detailed, it gets very elastic, it requires knowledge of the market. So that part of the technological partner needs to be outside. There's a third role, which is in the middle of the two, which we call there the empowered internal project manager, who is the guy who's gonna coordinate and run this transformation project. It's internal in the sense that it doesn't belong to the technological partner. So we should not delegate the technology to lead the process. But this guy or this team can as well be an external partner, not the same as the technology partner. So a senior expert, a senior project director who can easily be integrated within the company can work very well and sometimes better than the internal project manager plus PMO plus program director. But it should not be confused with the technological and technical PM, nor with the business leadership, which is surely on the side of the customer. So it's more a trilateral activity that we see in best practice projects, especially from some size upwards.
I would like to add to that also I think that the aspect that management would need to look at is also that comparing the time span that we are ready to allocate for this to be a success, in the sense that we all know time is short. You need to be really fast in getting to market, capturing the business opportunities while you have the window of opportunity. And do you have the time to build the capabilities in-house? Because it takes time to get from 0 to 100. Or is it better, in order to get the let's say the expertise at 100% immediately, to involve some external sources for a limited period of time, so that you can actually hit the ground running, but at the same time start building the core capabilities that you know you're going to need to run the project. So you start building those core capabilities in-house. But it's a combination. It's always a balancing off in a more holistic view on things.
Yeah.
And as I've written here, it was written here also, there's an impactful change lead network. You know, you need to, if you want to get the organization energized and involved, and for them to speak up, and to them to understand as well what is required, you need to have those, let's say, listening ears and ambassadors around the organization across all levels, both vertically and horizontally, in order to make the execution actually run. I read an article recently that I think it was something about 75% of projects that run over time, they do not stay on time. As Alberto was also saying previously, you need to have a very close eye on the target and on the execution, and on are we staying on target to actually reach what we want to within the time we have allocated, because it's an intricate system to balance, I would say.
It's interesting topic you touched, because actually having those agents of changes, if you like, it's something we discuss and literally in each and every webinar, even though, as I said, we normally discuss in technologies, right, and how they enable transformations in the business. But actually having those people to me, is probably one of the most important prerequisites for a successful transformation. Because we can do everything perfectly at our end, working with the top management, but then when it comes to an execution, it's about like daily work of hundreds, if not thousands of people, depends on the size of the organization, to make it happen. And actually, we cannot, as well as the top executives, they simply cannot reach out to each and every person or each and every unit in every geography. Even though we always recommend doing things like skip level practices and like invent those practices to make the top leaders to feel actually how it works in trenches. But it always will have a limited effect, simply because of the capacity of top executives. So that's why we are trying to identify those change leaders and work with them and make them to drive those changes locally and build as you perfectly explained, also a horizontal network of changes. Because in the smaller groups, transformations usually it's easy to execute, and this is not just because of the size of the organization, but because you can rely not only on the vertical but also on the horizontal connections between people. If they are sitting on the same floor, it's always easy. If we are talking about a bigger and distributed organization, it doesn't work, or it's harder to achieve. So you need more people like that everywhere. You need your change agents.
Yeah, the key word here is trust. You know, you would trust your colleague that you've been sharing office with for the last 2 years, probably trust him more than you would trust the CEO who is flying in from another country, just to put into a very rough perspective here. And if your colleague across the room is telling you something, you would probably be more inclined to believe him because you have been sitting and maybe even working on the same things for a few years, and you have built that trust over time. And then, let's say, comparing to a high-flying CEO coming in and painting a beautiful vision, he knows nothing about what I'm doing on an everyday basis. So can I really trust what he's saying? You know, this is a very, very black and white example, but it's just to put things on the.
No, it's very true. It also depends, of course, on the corporate cultures and the teams. Sometimes someone coming from the outside has the capability and the ability to conceptualize the activities which are done in the company. So in some environment, I found it was very welcome. Someone coming from the outside, observing, say, hey, guys, here's a representation of what you're doing. Say, oh, thank you. We were doing this, but we didn't have the time to represent it, to understand it. Now you helped us understand ourselves better, and then you become immediately part of the team if you're not an expert. In other cases, especially if you come on a specific domain, of course, as you said, you don't get the trust because you are not part of the pain together and the enthusiasm. So it's really a mix. And also, we got a question on the resource allocation. What we have been discussing today was a bit on a conceptual level. So we talked about transformation projects. A transformation project can be a small thing, can be a large thing. So I've been in transformation projects where a project manager could handle easily 4 or 5 different projects at the same time. Speaking of internal project manager or operations management, because that was about checking what was being done. In a recent project, a full-time senior project director, I mean senior with CIO level experience, plus a full-time PMO, were barely sufficient just to assure the coordination. So it's very variable, but would be interested to talk about the real projects if you like. What is in a full transformation project? We need all these points, and we need the dynamics to run it together. So we need to have someone who is able to run the thing, the trusted transformation consultant and program director, a transformation office if you have it, a sponsor at CXO level and leadership and the roadmap to get there, a business owner who has a vision on where and why we want to go and is capable to move all the team together, and empower the project management or project manager team, internal or we said, or third party, but not purely technical, who can lead that. And what Karen also quoted, the impactful change lead network. So this is really about the dynamics of people who need to work together. So that's the glue to move to keep the thing together and to allow it moving. Then, as Alexander said, typically we think about size of projects which are small and adjustable because the evolution is quick. So infrastructure projects, which were typically the longest ones, also have shortened their time span from years to months, but they are still relatively long. We have a number of projects that can be used as quick wins on a number of activities, and application maintenance itself is changing its shape and becoming sort of application redevelopment or application rescoping, which is becoming the new normal.
Yeah, I can only say this one slide here is, I think between the three of us, we have probably something like 75 to 80 years of experience. So for those listening, this is your, like, was it 5 bullet point checklist It's not exhaustive, but it's a good place to start.
Yeah. Personally, I mean, probably the smallest project of this kind I've been managing. The whole company was in one room. Was a small company, but with thinking big, thinking well. So we did it. And the largest, I've been contract director of a contract of 500 millions, so €500 million. So completely different scale. And completely different processes, but the mindset still and the brain were still about the same in getting to that target and keeping in mind the business part and the organizational and the people and the process part and the technology part and having someone who is capable to get in the picture together. And unfortunately, very often. Inside the company, the people who would have this capability, they are too busy to be able to do it properly. So they need to establish some partnership with trusted partners.
Yeah, it's just the combination of human and digital, yes. But it's still the machines haven't completely conquered what we humans can do. So luckily, but you never know where we might be in the next generation. But yeah, start with the human and then combine with the digital.
Because actually having a technology background myself, I would say that if like 20 years ago, somebody will present me something like that, like what we've seen on the slide, I would say, well, this is too theoretical for me. This is academy, right? It's not practical. And now, like wearing the glasses and having some gray hairs, I say, well, that's perfectly practical, and that must have checklist. And as you said, it's not complete. And in your particular situation, in your company, your team, probably the list will be much longer than this. Maybe, and maybe some of the things you have, so you don't need to be worried about. But actually, they're the key preconditions to make any kind of a change successful. The transformation consultants, okay, you can have this guy internally. It's not necessarily somebody external. However, I see many companies missing this expertise in-house simply because they, as a business, they always focused on delivering value here and now, and therefore, as organizations, they are pretty much run the business focused, which is fine. Having a program director, again, I've seen many examples when, like you, Alberto, said, so how many changes you're running in parallel? They think that 5 to 6, in reality, they're 25. And people are overloaded, even without like changes, just with the normal routine. If the business is growing, people always have something to do, right? And they're serving their customers first of all. But at the same time, I tend to believe that change management and transformation, this is full-time job. This is not something you can do as a side activity or a pet project. It's not a pet project. This is something that will define the way your company work for coming years. For example, this will affect the motivation and the performance and the many aspects of your team. And actually, your team is what delivering this value to your clients. Like a proper sponsorship from a CXO level. If there is no sponsorship and there is no real interest and involvement of the CXO into a transformation, it's very likely it will lead to nowhere. Because again, there is a certain element of enforcement, not just alignment, but enforcement of any kind of a transformation. And this is something you can hardly achieve on a program director level. Sometimes you need more power in the organization to influence it. And all the other components in this list, they are perfectly practical to me.
Last question coming up here or in the chat. Would you deny an assignment if you see that the CEO does not stand behind the program? personally, I would probably start with a conversation with such CEO and trying to find out what is really the reason why he's not standing behind that program. And I'm sure that the discovery process with such CEO would unveil some very interesting aspects, which would either lead me to say, I'm not the right person to help you, or figuring out, okay, what is actually being said here can be, let's say, merged with the project so that it actually can become a more cohesive project across the organization. So it would depend on the discovery phase.
Yeah, and probably also on the level of delegation. If I take this example, might be cases where the CEO simply doesn't follow this kind of projects because he just focus on the finance part and is delegating everything to the COO. But if the COO isn't fully empowered on this, then okay. On the other hand, if it's a small or medium company and the CEO is not involved, then I would say no chance unless we convince them.
I think Marcus is asking a perfect question, and because actually sometimes we are facing this dilemma. Because especially if we look at the big organization, it's often the situation when people from executive level, but not the CEO himself or herself or a board, they are approaching us and asking for help with the transformation. So sometimes it's like the next level in the organization. And then we really need to understand who will sponsor that on the top level. Because actually, for some of the transformations, you cannot find anyone in the company who is really interested in the results of the transformation except CEO or the board. Because if transformation is something, then the touching cross-functional interests or interest of the different organizations in the company, or you're trying to build something end-to-end in the company, it's normally hard to expect people responsible for a particular vertical inside of the company to be the effective driver of the end-to-end transformation cross-functionally. So therefore, like from the standpoint of the organizational design, the only person who is really interested in the result of this transformation is actually a CEO. And then we are coming back to your question. We need to understand whether this person is really has interest to the results of this transformation, whether we have a common view of what's the vision, what's the goal of the transformation, and what's the strategy, and whether this person will supporting the internal team, this transformation office, and us as an external, will the person listen to us and take it into account, not necessarily do exactly what we telling them. And sometimes that's the dilemma.
Yeah. Ultimately, if the management is not behind the program, there will be no program.
Well, there might be a program, but it will definitely not succeed.
Yeah,